We are Makilala TV, the first Filipino American TV talk show in the New York metro area. Get to know us as we talk to the community leaders, innovators, advocates, and emerging artists who affect Filipino American life.
Why is it important to get our voices heard or create an image of who we truly are? We've heard people say, if you don't tell our stories, who would? And when we do tell our stories, are we ready to face criticisms? That and more are today's topics on our episode on why we tell our stories. I'm Jen Fear. Together with my co-hosts Rachelle Ocampo and Cristina Pastor, we welcome you on Makilala TV at Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Joining us today are two highly recognized storytellers in their respective fields. Our first guest is Maia Cruz Palileo. Maia is a multidisciplinary Brooklyn-based visual artist who recently had her solo show, Dear, 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 at Tamer Grand Gallery in Manhattan. The theme of her artwork revolves around the Filipino American history and culture. Our next guest is Ernabel Demillo. Ernabel is host and reporter for CUNY TV's Emmy-nominated, nationally syndicated show, Asian American Life. She's also a journalism educator at St. Peter's University. Maia, Ernabel, welcome to Makilala.
Thanks for having us.
Exciting. So my first question, this is a panel of storytellers. As storytellers, how do you decide on a subject matter? Do you create an outline or you con vivi? That was a joke, but yeah. Which I have no idea what it meant.
What does that mean?
I had to slip that in. But yeah, so let's start with Ernabel.
So where do I find my stories? I find it everywhere, really. I'm actually also one of those journalists that loves actually to pitch stories. And as you mentioned, I'm also a journalism educator, and I tell my students, the stories are here, where you are, where you live, where you work. It's also what you read, what you see. You know, you have to be great observers, and it could be something as, something as simple as potty training your daughter, or something, as serious as maybe human trafficking or sex trafficking. One of the recent stories that we covered, but. I tell people the stories are just in front of us all the time. We're a city of 21 million people on any given day. Yep. There are 21 million stories.
How about you, Maia?
Most of my stories come from my family. I was a lot of the work that I do, painting mostly. I find inspiration from the stories that my family told me, and from that, it's actually branched into more historical storytelling about America and the Philippines and our past and our history together. So that's where my work is going now. But it all stems from oral history, mostly from my Lola.
Does your family appreciate you telling their stories?
I do. I don't tell the stories like verbatim. Mm-hmm. Most of my work is quite interpreted, and it comes through a filter of me, growing up here. I have my experiences, their experiences. So it's more sort of questions than answers, I guess, is what a lot of my paintings.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because I started by sharing my own immigration story.
That's right.
It was 5 years ago, and
which is a very good story, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But I didn't know how would people react, and I remember I was so worried because it's about being TNT illegal, breaking the rules. At the same time, we went through a lot of tragedies and the joys of having family together, but. So when I was publishing the book, out of status, I was worried, maybe I shouldn't do it. I mean, I have neighbors who didn't know that I have family who got deported, and my son was like, Mom, you're not writing for other people. You're writing because you want your stories, you want to get your voices heard. So I think that's an important lesson that I got from my son. But Cristina, I mean, you tell a lot of stories of the Filipino American community in your magazine.
Because there's a lot of stories. One
Stories
Filipino
or chismes.
that is another kind of story. So one Filipino, one person, one individual can have 3 different stories. It depends on who they are. It could be the story of one person as a mother, her story as a nurse, or her story as a wife.
Yeah,
you
lots
know.
of
So
intersections.
different kinds of stories.
Yeah, but the stories doesn't end when you publish your story or when you publish, you release your
we
interview.
think it does. Like once it's done, we're like, okay,
It depends
moving
on how
on to the next
controversial
story.
it is. Yeah.
Right.
It depends on
Yeah,
how
I mean,
controversial it
when
is.
you create an artwork and when you do the PR for is it in NAPW or something like that.
NIWA, yeah.
Right. So I mean, do you, like you said, once you do it, it's done. But what about those people that share the story, like Alex?
Alex Tison's
Alex
story is
Tison's
not done
story.
yet. People are still talking about it.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Because
There's
it touched on
always
so many
three-
lives.
But
It touched on so many
But
aspects
they're
of
both
life.
dead. I mean, the storyteller and the character of the story.
Yeah,
aren't here
but
to
the
defend
story does not
themselves.
end just because the storyteller is gone.
But we should explain too to
Yeah.
our viewers who
Right.
don't know. So
Yeah.
Alex Tizon obviously is a journalist for the Seattle Times who wrote this very compelling piece about this woman that he had called Lola, who had lived with him all his life, who turned out, he reveals in this story, which by the way, he did not know was going to be published because he died before.
wow, I didn't know
He
that.
died
The
the
night
day,
of
the
ours.
day before the Atlantic Monthly decided that they were going to publish this. But he reveals in this, he reveals that this Lola was really a slave, that they did not pay her, that they, the family, the mother abused her, and I know it caused a lot of controversy
There's a lot
Your
of
wife.
internal conflict in our community.
in the community, right? Because the community felt like they had to defend Alex Tizon, and also they were saying, well, a lot of people don't understand that this is something that's also cultural. But I think it's important, for
There should be a
Filipinos
line.
to be able to, to confront those stories, to tell those stories. Because we're actually working on a story like this now for my show, for Asian American Life. Another reporter who's very good at stories like this. She has, she was a reporter for Dateline, so she's really good with investigative pieces. But it's about the human trafficking going on within the AAPI community. It's Asian among Asians. So, the South Asian community taking advantage of their own. Filipinos taking advantage of their own.
yes.
The Chinese and the Koreans taking advantage of their own. Those untold stories, and people want, to sort of like hide those stories.
Yeah.
But it's time to start talking about stories like that.
So my question is, we talk about these stories and bring it out in the open, and then what happens?
Well, that's the next step.
We never change the situation. Nothing ever gets changed.
I think
No,
there
I
is.
think we do. Yeah.
Once you start talking about it and people start making a fuss about it and start yelling and start demanding from their elected officials and people of power, policies change, rules change, and I feel like that's where we can slowly make changes. Yeah.
Because a good example, sorry.
Go ahead, go
But
ahead.
a good example is, and so this is the New York Times. This is a non-Asian writing a story about the nail salon workers.
yeah, that
Yes,
one is a good
so
story.
that was quite a
Prime
compelling
option.
story, and immediately, because of course it's the New York Times, but Governor Cuomo, the next day, he started passing, or he introduced legislation to crack down on these nail salon workers. But then I know there was also another story
that's
there
right,
too, right?
There's a
Um,
lot of
There's a local
implications.
politician
Right, right.
that is
Ron Kim,
yeah,
right, yeah.
that is advocating for the nail salon.
Yeah.
But
Or
there-
for the small
owners, yeah.
businesses.
Well,
For the small
For the small
businesses.
business.
But there are
Right.
community leaders, though, that are kind of upset that Filipino Americans are kind of coming to be known as yaya, or they're trying to like shy away from that. We don't want to be just nurses. We don't want to be just yaya and stuff like that. But then stories like then they just want to highlight people who are in a higher profile. But at the same time, you're omitting who we
Those side-
who we
yeah.
are, the other part of our.
The thing is that if
culture.
we don't say anything, if we only just shine the positive parts of our community, nothing will improve. We're always going to think that we are the model minority.
Right.
If we don't say, basically, for example, data disaggregation, if we don't separate the different types of issues that we have within our community, no one's going to know that there's issues and that things need to be fixed. It's really sad. But so going back to storytelling, I wanted to ask a question of how did you know that you were going to get into this field? Like, when did you start basically painting or creating visual arts, and when did you start sharing stories?
Maya.
I don't think I knew I was going to be a storyteller. I was always asking questions and getting stories, but I actually started realizing that I was interested in my family's history when when I went to grad school for art. And it turned out, you know, it was sort of like making work, and you're like, what am I going to make work about? What am I interested in? What am I interested in? And it just turned out that that was what I was interested in. My mom passed away when I was a teenager, so I was always like, kind of like more nostalgic, like sort of more of in a memory kind of way that I was interested in it, but in the past. But then that kind of evolved into, well, what was her life like? What was it like for them to, my parents came here in the early 70s, and I was born in Chicago in 1979.
So when you paint your family, Maia, what are you telling us about your family?
That's a good question, and actually, the fear of telling your story, I relate to that, because for a long time I was just like, oh, this is too personal. Who's going to care? Who cares about my family? You know, and it's a struggle to feel like it's valid. It's a valid thing to
No, if
to
I
explore.
am somebody watching your, looking at all your paintings, what do I get out of that? What story are you actually telling me about your family?
There's, like I said, it's mysterious. A lot of times someone will ask me, like, what is this painting about? And I'm like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
that's
know.
right.
You know, like, not that I don't know, but painting is a very still and quiet form, like visual art. So I was thinking about visual art. You don't need to know anything before you see a painting. You don't need to know words. You don't need to know how to spell. You don't need to know how to tell a story. You can just see something, and that it's an experience that it doesn't really have a language. So the paintings are mostly portraits. They're usually some kind of environment that maybe might remind you of the Philippines. Recently I was making paintings of landscapes in the Bronx that looked like people were like, I thought this was Mexico. And so it's interesting because you see the person in the image who maybe looks a certain way, and then you connect them to the environment, and then it's just this still image, and then everybody brings different things to what they want. But more than Filipino people relate to my work, which I was like, wow, I can't believe it.
Ernabel,
Yes.
is the vehicle for storytelling important? Like journalism versus visual arts.
No, I think they're. I think
Are they the same
I think
in
they are.
conveying the
I think
message?
they are the same. And you know, going back to I love, by the way, Maia's paintings. And when you talk about like what we see, what I saw in your painting was I saw a reflection of myself, because we don't see too much of that, right, in
Exactly.
art, right?
Yeah.
Because you're coming from sort of like the same intersections that I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And I said to her, one day when I can't afford your paintings, I will. buy one.
Are you expensive?
I'll talk to my guy.
We'll talk later, right? So as far as, so I think it just
Yeah,
depends
that's
on,
right,
you know,
yeah.
whether you're a novelist, a painter, a broadcast journalist.
I think it also depends on what he or she is willing to relay, right? Whatever it is you're comfortable opening up to in the way you tell
Well, I
your
think
story.
journalists too have to be careful.
That's
you know,
right,
we can't personalize too many of our stories.
Why is that?
Well, then, because that's the bias. You know, you don't want to show any kind of like bias. And I remember when I first started out as a reporter, I did not pitch a lot of stories about the Filipino community, because you kind of didn't want to be, you know, that the Asian reporter.
Yeah.
Pigeonholed
Yeah,
into that.
And also because usually back when I was starting out as a reporter, I was the only Asian on the air, if not just at that one TV station in the market sometimes. So, you know, you didn't want to be that Asian reporter covering Asian issues. Now I do that all the time with Asian American life. But I remember my producer, because I worked weekends, he told me this story about his neighbor who was convinced was taking advantage of these lolos, these old men, he called them. He goes, Ernabel, there's like 7 of them that live in this house, in, you know, in
Are these
Sacramento.
the Manos?
They were not Manos.
Oh, they were not Manos.
And it turned out, we did a little digging, this woman, Filipino, was taking advantage of them and taking away their passports, because he actually started asking questions.
That is one of the signs of human trafficking.
Yes,
We
yes.
had an episode about
And
that.
so at first I was hesitant, because now I'm exposing something happening in our community, right? And I was like, no, this is terrible what she's doing. So we went there while the woman wasn't there, and the Lolos were there. And you know, I walk up, and I guess because I'm Filipino, they let us in the house.
that's
I go, my photographer, I'm like, let's go. So we go in. Wait, they welcome you in.
The woman is Filipino too?
Yes,
Oh,
the person
okay.
taking advantage of them is Filipino.
Filipino too.
And we saw their, the conditions. They were like maybe 5 or 6 living in one room. She turned off, it was 100 degrees in Sacramento in the summer. She turned down the air conditioning, so they all had to wait, you know, they were hanging out in the driveway. And we did the piece. I talked to them and I explained to them, this is going to be for KOVR. We're the CBS affiliate. It's going to be on TV. And they were willing to talk to us. And we had to call her and say, hey, we just talked to some of your tenants. Your tenants. The one who took their passports, away. We'd love to get your side of the story. And I remember when she talked to me, when she saw that I was Filipino, she thought that I was going to give her a break.
You would be on her side. Right?
Yeah, because she tried to buddy up to me, talking Tagalog. I don't talk Tagalog, so but we did this story, and we were able actually to help the men there.
Wow.
So that makes you feel good. That really makes you feel good.
Yeah. That kind of story is kind of.
But I was hesitant first. Like, I don't want to be, I mean, the Filipinos are going to be mad at me.
That's right.
Doing this story.
Sometimes you're not sure whether you're doing the right thing or not, or whether you should expose it. I mean, when I told my story, I didn't realize it turned my life into a different direction. I mean, I met Maia and Ernabel through ARC. ARC is an advanced rural kids to feed and get kids to school. We had an ARC event called Bahay. And the funny thing is that I met Ayesha through Makilala TV. And as I was saying, sometimes you have to tell your story.
When you told your story, Jen, the immigration story, what was the reaction from your family? Your brothers, how did they react?
Well, that was the promise from my brother that when he was in detention, that I will let his story be known, and that's why it took me like 5 years before I actually finished the actual book. But I couldn't, and I showed them drafts. I make sure it's fine. I had to edit some of that, take it out, but it's actually the family story. But the thing is, I didn't realize when you do that, some people will get mad at you or call you names, and then when you go to because some people think that what we did is wrong, which I can understand, because what we did actually is we came here, we overstayed. So you have to know that there are consequences in telling your story.
Right, in your truth.
Yeah, and we have our guests from human trafficking. Some of them didn't want to come up yet because their case is still up in the air. But there are so many stories out there that we have to share.
That's right.
To bring back to the question I'm going to ask is like, well, if there's one person that you be given access to the interview, or to create an image, or to feature in your magazine or do PR, who will that be? Doesn't have to be Filipino American.
I would choose Victoria Greaves. Vicky Greaves, the first Filipino Olympian.
Oh, cool.
She's from San Francisco, I think.
Yeah.
Dreves.
Why
Dreves,
her?
Because at the time, not a lot of Filipinos. She's Filipino American. Not a lot of Filipinos would be into swimming. She's a swimmer. She's an Olympic first gold medalist, I believe. Not a lot of them would go into sports.
Yeah, that's funny you said that now Filipinos into swimming.
Yeah.
Every American friends that I have, and when they find out I'm not a good swimmer, they laugh at me because of how is that possible? You grew up in an island.
My daughter is a competitive swimmer.
Wow.
So what about you, Ernabel?
I could pick someone dead, right? Yeah. So.
Vicky Graves is dead. He's gone now.
That's how it
Well, this woman who just died. Now, of course, I'm going to forget her name because this was not part of the outline of questions.
We got you.
I was not prepared for this. But she was a war hero, but she kept it a secret. She just died. She was I think 101. Oh gosh, I wish I remembered her name. And they only realized after she died, because she kept it a secret. So she was in the Philippines and she was a spy for the Americans. And then she was then she was actually imprisoned by the Japanese, and she did not actually reveal any of the secrets to the Japanese.
Wow.
She eventually made her way after the war. She made her way here to the United States, up to New England, and she just lived her life quietly there without anyone knowing that she had been this hero, this hero in the Philippines, helping the United States. In World War II, and so now she's being given the Congressional Medal of Freedom. I would love to. I wish she was still alive. I would love to talk to her.
That's right.
So that's
you, Maya.
Well, I'm going to say my family again. I think my grandfather, because he died the year I was born, and I only know some of my relatives. You only know them through stories, especially if they were from the Philippines and didn't grow up with them. So I feel like there's a lot of mystery around that whole side of the family history. So that would be my choice.
That would be interesting, right?
What about you, Rachelle?
Yeah, that's very similar as Maya. Is actually my mom's mom. I only have one picture of her. My mom doesn't really talk about her parents because they passed away very, very young. Fortunately, my mom is the oldest out of like 11 children, which is normal apparently in the Philippines. But yeah, I'd love to just learn more about her and what she did. It could be as simple as she's just a family home worker person that took care of her family, but I want to know her story.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you guys get upset when there's so many medium of storytelling? It could be a vlogger, it
Yeah.
could be a talk show, it could be a real journalist as opposed to pseudo-journalism, or such a thing. Do you get upset when you find out that, they didn't go to school, to the journalism school, or
Have proper training.
have proper training? So do you look at them? It's a press club or whatever.
Peter Jennings was a high school dropout.
Yeah.
The ABC anchor. I don't think that really has anything
Yeah,
to
that's
do
right,
with
yeah.
I think as long as, for me, also as a journalism educator, as long as they follow the principles of journalism and also are good writers, and also just their stories have context. That they interviewed like the right people, diversity of sources, not meaning just diversity, men, women, but ages, diversity of gender, diversity of color, diversity of socioeconomic factors too. So I think for me, I don't know. I think there's so many very talented young people, young writers, young reporters, young storytellers that I don't think. That's
Yeah,
important.
because there's so many medium. There's this
Yeah.
person who puts her stories on Instagram, like one day at a time.
That's
and
cool.
all of a sudden, a publisher contacted her and turned it into a whole book.
Yeah.
So, it's an amazing time, I guess, to
Yeah.
be storytellers.
As long as you
Yeah.
tell your story in an engaging way and without fluffing it up a lot.
Well, that's
say
Instagram.
Say it accurately, and you're good.
That's why you're not on Instagram. You gotta
And everything is fluff on Instagram.
Not only on Instagram.
do you guys have any regrets? Like, oh wait, why did I do that story? Why did I say that? Why did I ask that question? Like, did you make somebody cry with your stories?
Oh, actually, that's good when you make something.
That's good for the
I know you're really getting there.
But actually, I just recently did a story about the rise of breast cancer in Asian American women, and one of the people that I interviewed, she's a civil rights activist, very well known here in the Asian American community. And the last question I asked her, she started to cry, right? And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I made her cry. But that's why I'm going to start my story, because it was so compelling. I made her human because she really was trying to be as, talking about it in a very professional way. But then when she became like human, she became more relatable too.
Yeah.
To, I think personally to our
that's
viewers.
good.
Yeah.
And so when, so sometimes I do kind of like to make them cry, or at least have that emotion come out.
What about you, Christina?
I don't remember making anyone cry. I've
What do
made
you
a lot
mean?
of people angry.
Oh yeah, you made a lot of.
I
I
guess
guess
nice
that's good.
too, right?
That's
yeah,
good.
because it brings out emotions in them. Yeah.
You've made me angry, Christina. Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot of stories to be said, and a lot of emotions that come out of it.
Yes.
That's a good thing, though. That means
Yeah, that's
that was
the
goal.
juice.
Yeah.
How about you, Maya? Did everybody come to your paint, see one of your artwork and said,
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's hard to see people look at my art. But, I was thinking about this, like, if I had any regrets, and I wish I had learned Tagalog. Like, I mean, I can understand, but my speaking is very remedial. But I was thinking about it because when I went to the Philippines to visit my family, it was like my great aunts. The language barrier is so great that I couldn't understand the stories they were telling. And so, for me, I think that informs the way that I paint because, like I said, it's that visual thing. Like I literally sat up with my great aunt in the backyard holding hands, and she just said, don't forget us. And she said in Tagalog, I could understand, which I was glad about. But for me, I was like, then I came home and I was like, I got to make these paintings for them, you know, it's for them. Even though I don't know all the stories, that like I have a connection with them, and she literally said, "Don't forget us."
Yeah.
And actually, the day I started one of her portraits, my uncle called me and said she'd passed.
Oh, really?
It was crazy. It was like we had this connection, you know, and for me, like painting is very like that spiritual sort of connection with my
finish that
ancestors.
painting?
Oh, I did, yeah, yeah.
Well, like any other story, there's an ending. So we're getting, I see our friend going like this. It's almost time to wrap up.
wow,
But before we do, you want to say something about your exhibit? Few seconds.
Oh, sure. Well, it actually came down last month, but it was at Tamor Grande Gallery in Tribeca, and I'll have another show coming up at the American Museum. No, I always say that. The American University, the Katzen Museum in Washington, D.C. in 2019.
And of course, Ernabel.
Yes,
Talk
so
about-
Asian American Life, our monthly show, we premiere every month, first Friday of the month on Channel 75 and 25.3, and also nationally syndicated. So follow us at Asian American Life on Facebook.
Well, I guess that's it for today. Maia, Ernabel, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to bookmark Maia's website, MaiaCruzPalileo.com, and be up to date with all of Maia's art events. And follow Asian American Live to catch Ernabel's next interview at facebook.com/Asian American Live. And of course, to our viewers, thank you for inviting us to your homes, and hope you tune in again next time. Don't forget, follow us on Makilala TV. Until next time, sa ulitin. Bye!
Bye.
That was fun!
Thank you.